Good morning, and I call to order the 2024 annual meeting of St. John United Church of Christ, and we'll start with a word of prayer from Pastor Lisa.
Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks for this gathering, for this blessed opportunity we have to come together and make decisions for this congregation. Bless this time of meeting. Help us to listen more loudly than we speak. And help us grow together in common purpose to serve you as we serve your world. These things we pray in the name of our Savior. Amen.
I want to thank you for taking a moment of your day as we reflect on the year just past and for your participation in the year ahead of us. A slight change to the meeting agenda. We're missing an item 3, that is the Council President's report for Christy Kessler. Our first order of business is the approval of last year's annual meeting minutes found on pages 5 through 8 of the annual report. And I hope you've all had a chance to at least review this, and I'll ask if there are any proposed corrections to those minutes. In the back, Logan.
Page 5 in the middle says the 2022 financial report is 2030. So I think it's just a mistype on the year, or is it supposed to be 2030?
I think some of them are correct and some of them are wrong. So
Just cross your eyes and it'll correct itself. We'll make that change. Are there any other changes or corrections or additions? Okay, seeing none, I call for a motion to approve those minutes, the 2023 annual meeting, as corrected. Motion? And if you could, state your name as you... Do I have a second? Cheryl Burns. Having a motion and a second, I call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. I'll now turn the podium over to Christy for her president's report.
Good morning. So there is a report in here that I put together, but I'd like to expand on that just a little bit. So first and foremost, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve all of you this year as Church Council President, and it's also been an honor to serve alongside those who also served on Church Council. This is a group that they have freely and tirelessly given their time and talent to handle what turned out to be a very busy and challenging period of time for St. John. And their contributions helped us work through many agenda items. So while as a group we don't always have the same opinions, we do all agree that whatever decisions we've made along the way, they are for the greater good, work, and ministry of St. John, and we hope you feel the same as well. But it was a busy year with a strategic plan in front of us. We had many things on which to focus. Pastor Lisa will dive into the strategic plan a little bit deeper in her State of the Church, but I would like to highlight some of what your council accomplished in 2023, in addition to the strategic plan goals. So first, we approved funds to update our fire alarm system with new and additional sensors to replace outdated and unsupported system items. We approved the formation of a midweek hospitality group to be present for events that arise, mostly unexpectedly, such as funerals, to be a face of the church, welcome those who are arriving, and provide building directions. We had numerous conversations regarding security of the buildings when fewer people were present, and that is pretty much the case during a lot of our midweek meetings, and so we developed plans for ensuring that safety. We approved funds for technology to move email accounts to Office 365, and all of our data to be moved to the cloud to improve the performance of our systems. We updated our alcohol policy as it related to community events so that we were in compliance with city guidelines and our own church guidelines. We approved and supported all church workdays to clean and tidy our premises. We developed travel procedures regarding how to handle mechanical or breakdown issues with the buses, and we put a folder with these procedures and important phone numbers in the buses, as well as safety kits in the event of a breakdown or an accident. Last summer, we quickly pivoted and made decisive moves to cover Pastor Lisa's sabbatical when Pastor Franzen had to step back. We approved combining the Mission and Outreach and Justice and Witness committees into a single committee, which is now called Be the Church. This committee combines the work of both of those committees, eliminates the duplication of efforts, and streamlines their intended purpose. We approved the installation of new lights in the altar area, and a special thank you to Ron Smith for heading this up and making this project happen. Those are the altar lights that he replaced for us, and they look fantastic. We approved a scholarship for a college student majoring in early childhood education to serve as nursery attendant during the program year. That didn't come to fruition, but it has been approved, and so down the road, that would be something that we have in place should the need arise. We explored ADA and accessibility in the sanctuary. That's still a work in progress, and that item will be addressed as time goes on. We approved funds for the plaster repair up in the balcony and over in St. John Hall. Most of that work has been accomplished. Upon the advice and recommendation of the Legacy Investment Committee, we approved moving our Edward Jones funds to a Charles Schwab managed fund account with lower fees, and we hope higher returns. That remains to be seen, obviously, but that is the goal. We approved the rummage sale, as well as numerous fundraisers and other events, all church events and community outreach. I really could go on, and I know you would love me to do that. I have many more things I could add, but I'm just going to stop here to say that there's so much work council does that is not visible. So if you get a chance to speak to one of the council members, thank them for their service and the hours they have spent in meetings being your representative. One last item I want to address, and then I will pass the mic to the next party, concerns another beginning for our church. And if you read the January newsletter, then you saw that there was an article about the Exploring Spirituality and Inclusiveness Discovery Group. And they met from February to November of 2023. And it ended in November, which is the purpose of all discovery groups at some point to end. But born out of that group was the desire to continue in some way to provide LGBTQ education to the congregation, as well as begin conversations about becoming an open and affirming church within the UCC. The group came to council, and council approved the working group to continue educating and furthering the open and affirming process. So now we begin the extended process of speaking and listening for St. John. And it's important that we understand what this process is and what it isn't, and then provide at least a high-level introduction of how this will look in the next year or two to come. So before I sign off, I again want to thank everyone for your trust and support this last year. It has truly been my pleasure to serve. And at this time, I'd like to invite, I believe it's Barb Schutte, to come forward and speak to us on the open and affirming process. Thank you.
We do have some handouts, 2 handouts that we'll be passing around, and I'll wait till those get distributed. There's a purple one and a white one, so everybody needs 2 pieces of paper. Maybe put your hand up if you haven't got one yet. Everybody have one now? Okay. It was almost 40 years ago, in 1985, that the United Church of Christ General Synod first made a resolution inviting the churches to consider being open to gay people. That was the language used at that time. In 1985, we were not yet using all of the terms that we're using today. There was no LGBT in 1985. It was gay people. In the 40 years since then, both the United Church of Christ and indeed our entire country have come a long way, both to understanding the different types of gender diversity and in the acceptance of the people who are gender diverse. We now talk of LGBTQIA+. Back in 1985, when the UCC first proposed the churches could consider being ONA, they formed an office to communicate with each other on this issue, and over time that office has evolved into what today is the ONA, the Open and Affirming Coalition of the United Church of Christ. Of the around 4,600 UCC churches in the United States today, it's about a third of them that have chosen to join this coalition. If a church is considering becoming ONA, the national office recommends that the church take as long as they need to talk about how they feel about gender diversity. They recommend that it take at least a year or two to talk and pray and study, and talk and pray and study some more. It's a time of discernment for each church. Should the church choose to go ahead, the final product of this time of discernment is simply a welcoming covenant. That covenant would be something like, we, the members of St. John United Church of Christ in St. Charles, Missouri, have made a covenant to say that we are open to welcoming gender diverse people into our congregation, and that we also affirm that all people are children of God and are invited to full participation in the life of our church. This covenant statement then gets registered with the national office, and basically people who are searching the internet for an open and affirming church will be able to know that they are both safe and fully welcomed if they should choose to come to our church. Letting people know that this is a safe place is a big part of why we would want to do this. And that is really all a church needs to do to be open and affirming. There are no mandates on how we live this out. Once our statement is registered, we are open and affirming. We do not need to run out and get rainbow banners. The church just needs to write a welcoming covenant that then gets voted on by the members, and if approved, it then gets registered in the national office. At this point, I'd like you to look at your two handouts. First, we're going to look at the purple-colored one. Today, January 28th, we're announcing the beginning of this discernment process. For the next 2 Sundays, we will have listening sessions, first after the 9 o'clock service on Sunday the 4th, and then after the 10:30 service on Sunday the 11th. Please know that your voice will be heard and respected at these sessions. As the working group, we are very anxious to listen to all opinions within this church. After the 2 weeks of listening sessions, we will then be in the season of Lent. And as Pastor Lisa was saying, we're having small study group sessions on the history and polity of the United Church of Christ during those 6 weeks. And this is a really good place to start off this time of discernment, because this ONA process is truly unique to our denomination. I know some people have been following what's happening in other churches. The discussion of how other churches are recognizing gender diversity has been much in the news lately. But our structure in the United Church of Christ is very different from most other mainline denominations, and that will be talked about in the Lenten sessions. Once we're through that time of Lent after Easter, we will plan some more things. Next on this page, we have included some examples of statements from 3 of the churches around the country who have already joined the coalition. There's one from Texas, one from Mississippi, and one from New York. So when the Church Council voted in November to form an O&A working group, since then we've had 7 people who have agreed to be part of this group, and we've listed their names there on your purple sheet. So those are the basics of the open and affirming discernment process. It's a process that we enter as a whole church. The second handout, the white sheet, is a sheet that hopefully may answer some more of the questions that you might have concerning this process. And any other questions, we ask you to bring them next Sunday or on the 11th. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb and Christy. Moving on to new business, on page 20 of the annual report, you'll find the names of 4 individuals the nominating committee has recommended for approval as council members. And I'd like to introduce each of you, and if you would please stand as I say your name. And I know a couple are not here. Eric Bodine. Eric will be serving a second 3-year term. Carla Drysdale. Carla also will be serving a second 3-year term. Jeff Poole. Jeff will be serving 1 year remaining of a vacated term. And Ron Russell. There's Ron. Ron will be serving an initial 3-year term. With these 4 nominees, Church Council will move forward at a 12-member level as approved at the annual meeting, I think it was 2 years ago. And I will ask if there are any other nominations from the floor. Good, nominations are closed. Okay, there being no others, I call for a motion to approve the 4 council nominations. All right, Bev Stewart, is there a second to the motion? Dan Beecham, seconds. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carried. Mark Jakey, who's not here today, has agreed to serve as a member on the Board of Christian Education. Mark's brief bio appears on page 21, and our bylaws require members of this board be approved by the congregation also. So I call for a motion to approve Mark as a member of the Board of Christian Education. I have a motion. Carla Bodine. Do I have a second? Logan Brunge. Okay, we got Logan on record. Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. None. Mark is now on the Board of Christian Ed. The financial results, the next item, financial results for 2023 and the proposed budget for 2024 are presented on pages 10 through 19. The 7-member audit committee has reviewed those financial statements and submitted their report as shown on page 27. And there were no adverse findings, and we're grateful and so appreciate the work and professionalism that Carson brings to that position. And again, thank you, Carson. The Church Council is recommending for your approval the 2024 budget. I know Carson, Church Council, the Personnel Committee, staff and program committees all have worked diligently to bring you this comprehensive budget. So I'll turn the podium over now to Carson for explanation, highlights, and to answer any of your questions.
I'm just sure this is everybody's very favorite part, just talking lots about numbers. But I do love talking about them. So if after this you have any questions that can't be answered during this time, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to look at anything and talk about anything. Numbers related. All right. So we're going to begin on page 10, and it's going to go through page 13. So you can see it's laid out so that it's visible on both sides. So this report here, the profit and loss by class, provides a comprehensive overview of all of the church's financial activities. It displays the individual equity funds across the top with the general fund's activities listed in the first column. The general fund is central to the church's daily operations, and that's the one we prepare the main budget for. So I've kind of used some colors here to make it easier for us to quickly find our places. The first one is the green highlighted total income line. And if you look on the far left for the general fund, you see we received $599,000. But that if you go all the way over to the right, you can see that the church as a whole received $766,000. Notable contributions in the income are the property management fund, which contributed $25,000, and the bequest fund with a $13,000 contribution from the investments. So if we turn the page, now we see the peach line, which is the church's expenses, all the church's expenses in total. So we had $718,000 in the general fund, and all the church activity combined amounting to $881,000. And then below that is the yellow line representing the net ordinary income, and it shows a net loss of $119,000. And the decision to operate at a net loss for a post-COVID rebuilding effort was discussed during the 2023 annual meeting in connection with the strategic plan initiatives. So beneath the ordinary net income line are the realized and unrealized gain and loss of investments. So a negative number in this section is actually a good thing for us. There was, however, a $35,000 loss, you see that as a positive number, from liquidating an underperforming investment. However, unrealized gains in the market more than compensated, resulting in an overall $238,000 recovery compared to the $363,000 loss last year in 2022. So the net income line at the bottom, which includes those unrealized net losses and gains, shows a net loss of $104,000. Again, this net loss was a budgeted expectation. Despite this, the church overall, on the far right, had a gain, a positive net income of $123,000, primarily driven by those robust market gains. Below that, you see an equity reconciliation. This is basically taking the fund's starting balance, saying what happened during the year and how the fund ended. So the way we currently have our accounting structured, all of the activity is pushed up into the P&L so you have high visibility. Where did that money get spent? In what areas? But some things you kind of have to do a journal entry between those fund accounts, and that's what I show here. This past year, the only activities we had there were consolidating all of the mission trips into one fund and the youth savings account transactions, those are detailed on the left. So if we turn the page, so this is the balance sheet as of December 31st. The first column represents our numbers as of 2023, and the next column is year-end 2022, with the third column representing the change between the two. So we kind of look at that third column, say what numbers pop out at us that we want to talk about, and the first account I'd like to bring to your attention is our United Church Funds General Fund account. So that's on page 14, kind of in the top third. You can see that the value went down by $264,000. This was mainly the liquidation of the underperforming stock. You can see some of that asset is now being held in the money market account above, which shows a difference of $89,000 to the positive, so that went up. We put the funds there. The difference between the two primarily were expenses that were paid throughout the year. Overall, our assets increased by $108,000 in 2023, and our liabilities decreased by $21,000 from last year. Changes in the equity portion of the balance sheet are all reflective of the activity on the profit and loss and the equity reconciliation statement that we already went through. So we turn the pages, 16 and 17. Present the actual results of 2023 versus that budget year and the 2024 budget. Again, in 2023, total income exceeded our budget by $39,000 and expenses were $90,000 under budget, resulting in a net ordinary loss of $119,000, which beat our budget by $129,000 to the good. So you can see in every major category of the 2023 activity, we were under budget. I think this really speaks to the stewardship of all the committees that are involved and their efforts to keep costs under control. Yet still, if you look back over the past year, you see how many more activities and outreaches were initiated. So while the activity of the church went up, we kept expenses under control. So looking ahead to 2024, we start at the top. Again, we have a conservative estimate of our general offering, so that's just your general fund and property fund, basically your envelope offerings. We're staying at $500,000 just to be conservative, and we have a budgeted investment income of $80,000. Of that, $46,000 will be from the rental properties management fund, contingent upon the completion of all repairs and the immediate occupancy of apartment number 4, which has been under renovation for some time. The Legacy and Investment Committee will meet in the first quarter to calculate the actual amount of the bequest investment returns to be shared with the general fund, but currently we have that number budgeted at $34,000. So you can see some blanks there. We're no longer budgeting for those 420 accounts, special offerings in and out, because the expense side of those found in A2 would just cancel it out. So whatever we get in that category, we send a check out. So it has a net zero effect on our income, so we don't need to do that exercise. Due to the fact that we came so far under budget in 2023, every attempt has been made to trim out any expenses deemed not likely to happen, at least not at the rate formerly budgeted. As an example of this, if you look at our Christian development, which is on the top of page 17, you can see that we budgeted $22,505, but the actual was only $17,428. So we did increase the 2024 budget to $20,000, but you can see that that budget is less than the 23 budget. This was and that was mainly in account for salaries. I think we had budgeted that we were needing more in salaries, and that was not needed, so we went ahead and reduced that. You can also see it in the pastoral ministry. The budget for last year was $196, but we spent $169. This was primarily due to the visitation pastoral needs not being as much as we originally expected, although still being a very worthwhile endeavor of the church. Also, the 2024 budget is less than the 2023 budget there because we're not accounting for the sabbatical pastor this year. Overall, we're budgeting a net loss of $137,000, which is just about exactly $18,000 more than this year's actual, or 2023's actuals. And this can primarily be attributed to expected inflationary impacts across the board. So if we turn to page 18, this is the budget for our rental property management fund. So if you look at that box on the far bottom right, just above the page number, you can see that the properties earned $48,000 in 2023, and they contributed 25,000 of that to the general fund. The difference of $23,000 is reserved for future repairs and improvements to the properties as needed. We are budgeting a $46,000 income contribution in 2024, which is quite an increase over this year. Again, this is only possible if the renovations are completed in apartment 4 and we have full occupancy of the apartments. 3 loans were donated back to the fund this year, and the remaining 2 loans were renewed this year until June 2026. And our total debt now stands at $44,000. On the next page, we have the cemetery working fund. So the cemetery's actual income and expenses for 2023 are here, as well as the 2024 budget. As the cemetery working fund is projected to have enough income and savings to cover its budgeted expenses for 24, just like they did in 23, they are not requesting a disbursement from the bequest fund in 2024, as they used to do consistently in years past. So everybody should have a narrative budget. We did this for the first time last year, and it got a very good response from a lot of people. We had some excellent feedback, so we continued it this year. Again, this is an approachable story of St. John today. All of the church's activities are divided into 4 areas: mission and service, faith formation, worship and spirituality, and our life together. Each area shows its portion of the budget, a brief explanation of the focus, and some of the church's activities there, illustrated with pictures and quotes. It is easily seen here that St. John has many activities to engage and support the congregation, our community, and the world. Thank you to Karen, who worked her usual graphic design magic and made it so visually attractive, and all the staff and volunteers and participants who contributed content to be published here. This tool helps us to grasp the depth and reach of St. John for ourselves, but perhaps more importantly, to share it with those who are visiting or outside of the church so that they can see what is on offer here. Thank you to Carla Drysdale, Daryl Rhodes, Wes Norris, Janet Zolzer, and Dave Trouderman for being such awesome volunteers supporting the finance role every week, and for the audit committee overlooking us every year, and the legacy and investment committee making decisions to support the church's investments on an as-needed basis. All of these dedicated volunteers help make the finance department run so effectively year-round. Thank you, congregation, for your time this morning and for allowing me to serve you.
Oh, Carson, thank you so much. Such a blessing. I guess I'll ask if there are any additional questions that Carson may answer regarding the budget for 2024. And if there are none, I'll call for a motion to approve the 2024 budget. Derek, do I have a second? Okay. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. All right, Pastor Lisa will now present her report on the state of the church.
Well, I think we're doing really well, and I think we'll all go to lunch, so I could just stop right now. But you gave me a microphone, so I won't. I want to say a few things. First, about the budget. I know that there's always concerns about deficit budgets. I share them. But funds for a church are different from personal funds. I know Jim and I are saving for the idea that we might retire someday, maybe. But churches don't save for retirement. Rather, we have reserve funds to empower our ministries in the future, but also to help us with a rainy day. And I don't know about you, but I think a global pandemic counts as a rainy day. And we're in the place of rebuilding. We had a really large deficit budget forecast last year, and the one that we came up with was much less. And it's still a deficit, so it's like hard to celebrate it, but I think we really need to recognize how well you have done with contributing to the work of the church, as well as how well our committees have done with managing expenses. So give yourself a little bit of an applause for that, because that's a really good thing. Second of all, I want to point out that church attendance has increased. Now, has it happened at the pace that we wanted it to? Of course not. Nothing ever does, but it's increased. And I want us to really especially play that information against some other items. The 14 people who died this past year includes some members of our congregation who were omnipresent people here. The fact that with their loss set up against the fact that we've increased really says that we're doing well. And I do need to tell you that the fact that we have an increase in attendance ever so slightly is not the norm in most of our churches. So again, we are so grateful for people who are coming back and coming back more frequently. And we're really excited that we have a lot of new people in our midst. More and more people are coming to Inquirer sessions all the time. And even though they're not joining as members immediately, because we're giving them a longer on-ramp, they're here and they're excited, and that's really important. That said, I do want to let everybody know that it is time to clean up our membership rolls. Post-pandemic, the conventional wisdom, everyone that I talk to says be careful about, getting rid of people. People are going to be coming back, and we don't want to, make them upset as they re-navigate life. And as we go through this process, we're not even going to question the membership of anybody who's participated or given in any way, shape, or form, and that includes people on our visitation list. And we are going to continue to include anyone who even says they want to be a member of St. John, however little they've participated in the recent past. But it is time for us to come up with a new baseline so that we don't have this constant defeating feeling like we have this trickle of people every year. We lost 16 people who moved their membership. Some moved out of the area. Most of them are just recognitions of people who moved some years ago and they just got around to doing it. There's no sign that there's renewed dissatisfaction with anything. But it is time for us to do those numbers. So next year, when you come to this meeting, there's going to be a large decrease in membership. And I just want you to know that that's going to happen. It just needs to happen. We need to figure out what our new baseline is. We're 16 months into a 5-year strategic plan. And so it is my job, you could have picked this up, I hope you did, because it's now my job to go through this item by item. Just joking. You can take this home and read it. I'm just going to say some general things about it. Do I hear an objection? Yes. Okay, so we will now be serving dinner after this meeting instead of lunch. Now, I think it's really important and impressive how many of these things have been accomplished or started. None of these things that are on our list of things to do are the work of half an hour. These are long, involved programs that involve specifically 2 groups of people. One is our amazing staff, and that's Anna, Brett, and Christy with music, Katie and Stephanie with Christian education, Karen and Carson with administration, and we're adding now Lindsay with janitorial services. I do want to acknowledge the departure of Bentley, and we are grateful for the gifts that he shared and his time here, and we're happy that his ministry to children continues to bless the world. We have a strong staff, and they have done an amazing job getting many of these goals accomplished. We also have fantastic church leadership. Christy mentioned church council. Council may not always make the decisions that you like, but man, you need to honor them for their work. They are very thoughtful and deliberate. They consider all sides, and decisions have to be made, and they're not always agreed to, but they do listen and discern and try and work things out, and they are to be honored for their service. I really especially want to acknowledge Christy as our council president, especially for the craziness this summer, sorry. And the outgoing church council members, Jeff, Sheila, and Mark, and thank you for your time on council. We are now a 12-person council, as Dave mentioned, which was the goal set in 2021. I also want to thank our committee chairs and those who serve on committees. I'm not going to list names because I'll forget someone and then I'll be in trouble. But I do want to thank all of you on all of our committees. You do a lot of great work. That said, I do think that we may be reaching the point where we need to live into the maintenance of new programs that are already in place or are in process, and bring those things in process to completion. So I think it's time for Church Council to examine our strategic plan, not to drop items off, but maybe to say that these are things that we're going to work on a little bit later so that we can make sure we're doing the things well. I'm just going to speak for things that I've been part of because I can talk to them. So like discovery groups have started, but that is not something that is over and done with. You know, continuing those and maintaining those and creating new ones is going to be an ongoing task. It takes a lot of time of myself and other people. So I think it's more important that we lean into that and make sure that that stays, keeps working, rather than say, oh, that's done, and now try and move on to too many new things. And the other thing is like, I have a number of tasks that involve me interacting with the church community, or beyond the church community, working out with community leaders. And I've been doing that and meeting people and talking about what we're wanting to do and talking about what their needs are. But it may come to no surprise to you that the people in these community organizations have not been twiddling their thumbs waiting for St. John to say, we have an idea. And so it's taking time to build those relationships for those programs to take place. I want to continue doing those things. Others involved in this want to keep doing that, that work, and know that it's going to bring fruition as we go. Some things are already starting to do that, but these are long processes. And I think the thing that's most important is the point of the strategic plan was to turn our focus toward these areas, to make sure we're looking beyond our walls. Not that we have a quick end date to all these accomplishments. One of the things that I do want to lift up is the decision about contemporary worship. We had said we were going to start that in January. That's not going to happen. Because of staffing changes and shifting responsibilities, we're not going to start quite yet. We're going to start in April. And we're going to start slowly. We're going to start with one Sunday a month being a more contemporary service, and the others will continue to be the same at both services. Why? Because Anna and Brett and I and Christy and all of the committees, people on Music and Worship Committee and all the other people that have a say in this are already busy, and we want to do it this well rather than do it quickly. So we are taking time for that. It is going to be 10:30. That is going to be that contemporary time. That was after reading all of the forms that we looked at. That was overwhelmingly the direction where people seem to be going. And one of the things I really want to lift up in this process was the responses we got back on all of those forms. Because I think this is another really positive statement about this church and where it's going. I was really expecting to get a lot of forms back that were some version of my way or the highway. And I say that because in other things we've done, that's been the way people have given feedback. And overwhelmingly, the statements on those forms were things like, thank you so much for the time and thought you've put into this. I'm happy with either service, or if it ends up not being to my liking, I'll change services, because we all remember there will always be one traditional service, right? And I had the task of calling the few people that seemed a little bit more unhappy about the situation, and they were very gracious too. Everybody understands it's a process, and it's difficult to make adjustments and move in new directions. And we're willing to do that together. So I take great comfort in that. I take great comfort in that because as I look at this open and affirming process, I see the possibility for good things. We've done a lot of hard work to learn how to think before we react. We've done a lot of hard work to learn how to listen to each other, to let everybody have a voice. So I think as we take on this O&A process, we're ready. I'm not afraid. I think we can talk about hard things. I think we can hold different opinions. I think we can be respectful and responsible. If this had come forward 8 years ago, when I started here, I would have been really afraid to start this because we weren't at a place where we could do those things, but I think we are. I also want to let you know my role in this process. I am committed in this process to making sure that all voices are heard. Those are voices that share my point of view, and those are voices that don't share my point of view. Because the process only works if we speak and listen. So all voices are heard, opinions are shared, and people respected. And regardless of the outcome, I want this process to be a season of growth in our Christian walk. I want to end by thanking you for the opportunity of sabbatical this past summer. It didn't work out so well for you, although maybe it did, because you learned you could do things without me, and that's such a good thing. Nothing should ever feel dependent on one person. That said, not planning on going anywhere. I am continuing my Spanish lessons, mostly because I really like speaking Spanish, and I've decided it's finally time to conquer this, but also because I want to keep my language skills honed should they ever be required for any aspect of ministry. As always, it is my pleasure and privilege to serve with all of you. Thank you.
And there is another blessing for our church. Are there any other matters of concern the congregation would like to bring before the group today? You're all hungry. As a reminder, the current and incoming council members will meet in the workroom immediately following this meeting. And let us bow our heads in the closing prayer. Heavenly Father, we are grateful for the bounty this church finds within its walls, its members, worship, fellowship, exceptional staff and programs. Give us confidence and courage as we continue to be a beacon of light outside these walls, continuing and growing our concern for those less fortunate, opening our worship to all believers and those needing your abundant love. Jesus is the living water that always satisfies. He quenches our thirst and fills us up with love, mercy, and grace. It is in his name we pray. Amen. Okay, there being no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, we've got a second back there. First by Derek Kessler, second by Linda Richards. And all those in favor say aye. Aye. This annual meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.